Hey guys, tonight we slip into the still silken dark of ancient Egypt, where shadows curl like cats at your ankles, and the desert exhales its final warmth. You are not merely drifting off tonight, you are being escorted. Past the olive trees, swaying faintly in the night breeze, past stone lions that don't blink, even now, into the quiet center of the world, the bedchamber of a god made flesh, the Pharaoh. You probably won't survive this, but in the gentlest, most fragrant way possible. The city of Thebes is winding down. A warm glow hums from oil lamps set in brass holders. Papyrus blinds flutter slightly in the breeze off the Nile. Somewhere beyond the courtyard, a priest's voice lilts over the evening prayer. The scent of blue lotus is thick in the air, floral, sweet, slightly narcotic. You move through the gardens where date palms arch over mosaic paths and frogs croak lazily in sacred pools. Guards nod you through with glazed eyes, their spears upright but minds half asleep, lulled by incense and the drone of cicadas. You reach the gates of Karnak not with a clang, but with a whisper. Massive doors, once swung open to processions of gold and oxen and dancers, now creak softly just for you. Inside, cool stone breathes against your skin. There are torches burning low, no bright flames here, only soft orange flickers. The columns are so tall they vanish into night itself, like giants sleeping upright. You pass beneath them, and the hieroglyphs whisper as you go. They tell stories not for the public, not for the priests, but for the dark. This is where the secret life of the Pharaoh begins, not on the battlefield, not in the council chambers, but in the soft underbelly of night. It's where politics is stripped away, where gold is set aside, and where the god-king becomes nothing more and nothing less than a body, waiting to be touched by the divine. Or someone pretending to be. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments, so I know who's still awake with me in this corner of the past. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Feet tread the same tiles that bore sandals crusted with lapis lazuli. You pass a servant carrying a bowl of scented oil, his eyes cast down, his pace slow. He disappears into a side room, likely the antechamber where the Pharaoh prepares for. What comes next? And yes, there is a next. It begins not with candles, but with cleansing. The ruler of Egypt must never go to bed unpurified. You hear the splash of water against alabaster as attendants pour heated lotus-infused water into a deep basin. The Pharaoh will undress slowly, not for show, not for pleasure, for ritual. Each garment removed loosens a layer of the world. First, the headdress, then the golden broad collar. The kilt carefully folded. He is no longer at court. He is in transition between roles, between identities, between gods and ghosts. Outside the room, a priest marks a clay tablet with the hour. Not the time in minutes, but the hour in symbols. This moment is sacred because it exists in secrecy. The sun has dipped beneath the horizon, and the realm of Osiris begins. In this world, nothing seen is spoken. Nothing spoken is remembered. You imagine standing at the edge of the bath chamber, warm steam clinging to the walls, and watching the Pharaoh lower himself into the water. 4 attendants, 2 male, 2 female, stand by, not as lovers, not quite as servants, but as extensions of ritual. One pours oils, thick and dark, into the water. One begins to sing not words, but tonal phrases like water humming. You can't understand them, and you're not supposed to. They're meant to loosen your grip on waking thought. The water shimmers with blue petals. The scent is intoxicating. In the steam, the Pharaoh's body seems to blur, not out of modesty, but transformation. This isn't bathing. It's a rehearsal for resurrection. As the body soaks, it becomes symbolic. It is no longer a man's, it is Horus incarnate. preparing to meet Hathor in the dream realm. Historians still argue whether this ritual bath was ever witnessed by anyone outside the royal circle. Some say it was solitary. Others believe it was an elaborate performance, with high-ranking guests watching from behind veils, their breath shallow, their hearts thudding with fear and reverence. Who would dare glance directly at divinity undressed? Of course, Eleanor Herman, in Sex with Kings, reminds us that royalty has never been truly alone. Even in their most intimate moments, they are never unwatched. The same went for the pharaohs. Lovers, concubines, wives, they were chosen, trained, rotated according to lunar calendars and dream interpretations. Pleasure was not simply personal. It was part of the cosmic balance. One wrong moan, one misaligned caress, and the crops might fail. No pressure. You pass the threshold of the private chamber now. The bed is enormous, made of ebony and gold. Carved lion paws at the corners. The linen is imported, pressed and perfumed. There's a bowl of figs on the table, a pitcher of date wine. This isn't luxury, it's protocol. The gods expect the pharaoh to eat sweet things before dreaming. It softens the soul, they say. Makes it easier for spirits to whisper there. Secrets. There's a dog in the corner, asleep or pretending to be. It won't bark. It's seen everything. A fringe detail, nearly forgotten in modern tellings, is that certain pharaohs kept dream scribes, young men or women trained to sit silently at the edge of the room and record the ruler's sleep words. They believed dreams were messages from beyond, and sometimes they carried instructions, warnings, or praise. There's one record faint, on papyrus, where a scribe notes the pharaoh muttering, "Her hands were made of honey." Was it the prophecy? A memory? A metaphor? That scribe disappeared shortly after. Historians aren't sure why. As the lights dim and the fig bowl is emptied, you realize something odd. It's quiet. So quiet you can hear the linen shift as the pharaoh turns. Not out of restlessness, but in anticipation. Of what? A visitor? A vision? A memory clawing its way into the room. A breeze nudges the blinds. And you swear, for just a moment, you see another shape in the doorway. A silhouette in profile, slender, elegant, gone before you can confirm. Maybe it was just the statue of Hathor. Maybe not. The room smells like wine, crushed roses, and ink. The kind used to write prayers. The kind used to seal secrets. You step closer to the bath, drawn by the steam curling like serpents around your ankles. The air is heavy with the perfume of marjoram and cardamom, ingredients reserved for royalty and gods, and your skin prickles in response, half from the heat, half from the strange sensation that you are walking not through a room, but through someone else's dream. The pharaoh reclines, limbs loosened by hot water and sacred touch, while the attendants dip bronze pitchers into the basin, pouring water over his shoulders in slow arcs that catch the torchlight like melted gold. Every motion is rehearsed, ritualized, as if the body itself were a spell being chanted silently. One attendant scrubs gently with a cloth dipped in natron salt and crushed cedar. Another massages the calves with oil thickened by myrrh. You can smell it now, that rich, earthy sweetness that makes your thoughts feel drowsy and slow. In this chamber, nothing happens by chance. Each gesture, each breath, each flick of the wrist is part of an ancient choreography meant to cleanse not only the flesh, but the soul before sleep. And you notice, as the attendants hum low chants in unison, that the pharaoh's eyes are closed, not in fatigue, but in focus. This isn't relaxation, this is transformation. He is becoming the vessel, not a king, not a man. Horus, the living falcon, a god of the earth who must dream on behalf of an entire kingdom. Historians still argue whether these bathing rites were daily routines or reserved only for key lunar phases, solstices, or fertility ceremonies. Some texts refer to nightly ablutions as essential, while others imply that only queens bathed in such formal splendor. Yet fragments found in the book of the heavenly cow suggest otherwise. The Lord must be washed in the perfume of sky each night that the stars may hear his sleep. Poetic? Certainly. But in Egypt, poetry wasn't just art, it was code. You find yourself glancing at the figure seated beside the basin. She's older, veiled, draped in linen the color of sunrise. She holds a scroll and a stylus, and her gaze never leaves the pharaoh's face. She is the keeper of rituals, the one who records, corrects, reminds. Not a scribe, not a wife, something older than both. A role passed from woman to woman for centuries, always silent, always unseen in art, but always there. The erotic spirit. Through history speaks of such women as the memory of touch, living archives of what was once considered sacred knowledge of the body. Not lovers, not healers, guides, and it makes you think who trained someone to memorize the movements. Of the divine? How do you rehearse reverence? The bath ends not with a splash, but with silence. The attendants step back in unison. One produces a cloth embroidered with lapis blue thread, another with one dyed red with crushed pomegranate. The blue is for heaven, the red for life. The pharaoh is wrapped first in red life before afterlife, and gently guided out of the basin. The water is left to steam in silence. No one speaks. The air is so still you can hear the linen whisper against skin. He is led to a smaller chamber, candlelit, where a low couch rests against a wall painted with stars. On the couch rests a single item, a tiny jar carved from alabaster. It holds a cream made of beeswax, crushed frankincense, and fat rendered from sacred bowls. You know this not from labels, but because the scent hits you before your eyes do something, earthy and holy all at once. The cream is warmed in the palm of an attendant and massaged gently along the pharaoh's spine. Downward. Slow, careful. The motion mimics the rising of the Nile. It is meant to stir energy, awaken the life force, but only just, not to excite. To hum. To prepare the body for rest like a priest prepares a temple. You glance upward, where on the ceiling, tiny silver dots have been painted, each star named in red ink. The pharaoh's gaze lingers on one, you don't know which. He doesn't blink. Then comes the robe. Thin, soft, soaked in oil so faint it carries no fragrance. White as moonlight. This is the garment he will sleep in. It is not armor. It is surrender. And yet, to wear it is a responsibility. No common man could wear it without trembling. As he is dressed, a girl appears at the threshold, barefoot, veiled, no taller than a reed. She carries a cup. The wine within is not ordinary. It is date. Wine, boiled with mandrake root and sprinkled with powdered pearl. A known aphrodisiac, though one disguised as a sleep aid. She does not speak. She kneels, offers the cup, and disappears. You wonder if she exists. Some sources suggest such women were dreams given form chosen from oracles' visions, appearing at night only, vanishing before dawn. Not concubines, not real. Symbols made flesh. The Kama Sutra mentions the use of intoxicants in lovemaking as a means of erasing selfhood. You suspect the Egyptians had their own variation, only they made it look like prayer. The pharaoh drinks. Slowly. His eyes close again, not from fatigue but from descent. He is sinking now into that soft valley between power and sleep, where gods can speak plainly and no one is recording, except that woman with the scroll. Still there, still motionless. A servant brings in an object. A reed fan shaped like a lotus, not for cooling, for rhythm. It is waved slowly, back and forth, above the pharaoh's head, to lull the senses. A living metronome. The fan-bearer was a high-status role, sometimes a prince, sometimes a eunuch, always trusted. You watch as the shadow of the fan glides across the pharaoh's face like passing clouds. One moment he is a king, the next, a boy, the next, a statue, and then a ghost. You step back, the wine, the oils, the chants. the silence. It all works. You feel yourself pulled into it, not like a story, but like a current. You can no longer tell if you're in a room, a dream, or someone else's memory. Just then, a sound. Not a word, a note, low, from somewhere behind a curtain. A woman begins to hum, not music. A tone, specific, ancient, meant to mimic the murmur of river reeds in wind. A song of letting go. The erotic spirit refers to such lullabies as invocations of sacred fatigue, meant to welcome the body into a state of openness. Open to dreams, to visions, to messages, or to whatever and whoever waits behind the veil. You watch as the curtain trembles, not dramatically, not with gust or entrance, but with the lightest sway, as if it's reacting to a presence not yet visible. The note being sung fades slowly, like breath dissolving into the night, and for a moment, everything is utterly still. Then, as if on cue, one figure emerges. Not walking, not striding, but gliding, barefoot over polished stone. Her robe, thin and translucent, flows like river mist. Her hair, braided with beads of turquoise and small feathers, seems to shimmer with a rhythm of its own. You notice she wears no perfume, and that absence is startling. Everyone else in this palace smells like incense, oil, or honey, but she carries nothing but the soft scent of skin and linen warmed by night air. She moves to the edge of the bed, not looking at the Pharaoh, not looking at anyone. She kneels, then bows so deeply her forehead touches the edge of the frame. Then silence. No greeting. No words, just this motion, ancient, practiced, heavy, with meaning. You don't need a priest to interpret this. It's not for you anyway. The Pharaoh opens his eyes. Not fully, just enough. He doesn't rise, doesn't speak. Instead, his hand lifts, one finger pointing down to her shoulder. She moves, rising fluidly, and slips beneath the linen canopy like smoke. The fan doesn't stop moving. The breeze must never break. Even now, everything is part of ritual. You expect some grand gesture or sudden shift, but there is none. Instead, the chamber accepts this new arrangement, the way a pond accepts a pebble rippling. Yes, but quietly. You've read about these rites before, maybe in a footnote, maybe in some half-taboo exhibit buried in the back of a museum. The sacred acts of the Pharaoh, they call them. Acts that could be either literal or symbolic, depending on who you ask. Historians still argue whether this woman is a consort, a priestess, or merely a projection, a physical representation of a goddess summoned to complete the cycle. Was this intimacy, or was it metaphor? Was it both? Foucault would argue that power always hides within ritualized bodies, especially when those bodies are made to appear passive. But she is not passive. Her movements are deliberate, paced. She touches the Pharaoh's arm like she's tracing a glyph into clay. She places her hand over his chest, not to arouse, but to listen. She is checking his breath, the way one might check for wind before setting a boat to sail. You realize then that this is not the beginning of anything. It's the middle. This ritual has no defined start. It is part of a cycle, one that loops endlessly through generations, repeated not out of tradition, but necessity. There's a papyrus scroll in the library of Alexandria, what's left of it, where a priest wrote, "The god lies with the earth to remind it to bloom." This was interpreted for centuries as a metaphor for agricultural blessing. But here, now, watching this moment unfold in quiet reverence, you wonder. Maybe it wasn't metaphor. Maybe the act of lying beside someone, of entering the rhythm of breath and stillness was itself the blessing. No climax. No grand finale. Just presence. You turn slightly, and behind a screen, you notice two more figures. Older women, seated cross-legged, weaving something between them, a cord, a thread, a necklace. It's impossible to tell. They do not watch the bed. They watch each other. Their faces are serene, and you sense they are there not as witnesses, but as anchors. This chamber doesn't float away into fantasy because they hold it tethered. One of them hums softly, not a melody, just a tone. You've heard it before. When someone is comforting a child who's crying too hard to hear words, it's a reminder that you're not alone. Even gods need that dot. You feel your own breath slow. The warmth of the room wraps around your bones like a soft weight, and it occurs to you, no one here is performing. There are no audiences, no chroniclers. This moment will not be painted on a tomb wall or written into a triumphal text. This moment is made only to disappear, like the scent of incense after the last ember dies. And yet it matters. Perhaps it matters more because of that dot. Peter Webb's exploration of erotic spirituality suggests that the most powerful expressions of sacred union are the quietest. The touch of two fingertips beneath a curtain. The press of a forehead to a shoulder. The moment you stop being a person and become breath itself. This was not sex in the modern sense. It was intention. Energy exchange. Alignment with cosmic order. And whether or not it produced airs or headlines was beside the point. The woman's hand now rests on the Pharaoh's chest, fingers spread. His hand mirrors hers, neither moves. They are holding each other like two sides of a coin, identical in shape, opposites in meaning. You think of how in Egyptian lore, the left side of the body belongs to the night, the right to the day. Perhaps this is what's happening here, a merging of dusk and dawn, of divine and human, in a chamber where time stretches thin. Suddenly, the fan stops, just for a moment. A creak of the reed, a pause in the breeze. It draws your attention. Sharply, you realize that the fan bearer has knelt. He has bowed his head. Something has ended. Or begun. You look again, but the bed is empty. You didn't see them leave. You didn't hear footsteps. But the linens are smooth. Untouched. A bowl of figs sits untouched. Only the scent of crushed petals lingers. The two women behind the screen continue to weave. The rhythm hasn't changed. One hums. The other breathes slowly, as if they've done this every night for 1,000 years. You try to move, but your limbs feel weighted. Not with fear, with reverence. You are not an intruder, but you are not meant to stay. This place is not built for memory. It is made for forgetting, for allowing the body to rest in the trust that night will end and morning will return. Whether you remember your dreams or not, you close your eyes. Just for a moment, and then the fan begins again. You hear a sound, not loud, not sharp, just the faint thud of something wooden striking stone, a staff perhaps, or the heel of a ceremonial sandal, and instantly the air thickens, like hot wax hardening mid-pour. You're no longer in the sleeping chamber, not in body. In the world of the pharaohs, night is a layered place, and you've slipped through one layer to find yourself in another. The temple within the temple, where the body is absent, but the ritual continues. This is not rest. This is rehearsal, a different kind of dream. Before you now is a long corridor, lined with statues whose eyes follow you, though their heads never turn. You pass under a lintel engraved with warnings, not to trespass, not to ask, not to speak. The names of the gods too loud in the dark. The torches here burn blue, fed by rare oils. Their smoke doesn't rise, but folds downward like a silken curtain. You walk slower now, not from fear, but instinct. This place demands it. And then, you see him. Not the pharaoh, a priest. Tall, robed, face shrouded in leopard skin. He stands behind a low altar covered in sand. In the sand are symbols, drawn by fingertip inks, stars, eyes, and something more complex. A pair of intertwined reeds, shaped like two bodies in embrace. The priest erases them before you can understand. The erotic spirit tells us that the priests of night temples weren't celibate. They weren't forbidden's desire, they were trained in how to channel it. Sensuality was not weakness but fuel. A bridge, a fire to guide the gods across the mortal river. This priest draws a new image in the sand. A mouth. Just a mouth. Open. Waiting. You feel something inside you stir, not arousal exactly, but curiosity sharpened into discomfort. Why a mouth? Why now? He speaks. One word. You don't know the language. It sounds like air escaping from a jar sealed too tight. The sand trembles. You realize this isn't performance. This is invocation. You've wandered into a ritual not meant for spectators, behind the priest. A panel slides open, not dramatically, just enough, and two children enter, no older than 9 or 10, dressed in identical robes, carrying an object between them. A tray of objects wrapped in linen. They walk in silence, place it on the altar, and vanish. The priest unwraps the linen carefully. Inside, a small obsidian mirror, a pomegranate split in half, and what looks like a wooden model of a bed. He places each object with such care, it feels like choreography. The mirror faces you. You glimpse yourself, and for a moment, your face is not your own. It's older, tired, royal. Historians still argue whether this ceremony was a nightly observance for all pharaohs, or a specific rite for only the divine incarnations of certain dynasties. Some say it was invented by Queen Hatshepsut's priests to disguise political rituals inside spiritual acts. Others believe it dates back to the first dynasty, long before history dared write it down. What is known, though rarely discussed, is that these rituals always happened in two parts. First, the preparation of the body, then the reenactment of divine union. But not always with another person. Sometimes the other presence was conjured. The priest lifts the pomegranate and squeezes it gently over the sand. The juice runs like blood, dark, thick, sweet. He dips a reed brush into it and paints a new glyph on the altar, a boat with one oar. You don't need a translator to understand. This is the journey of the soul. But where is it going? You feel a breath on your neck. You turn. Nothing. And yet the air behind you is warmer than before. Closer, you step back. The priest looks up, not at you, but past you, behind you. You suddenly feel very, very seen. Then, without warning, the altar vanishes. The corridor collapses. The torches flicker out, not with a gust, but with decision, and you are back. In the palace. In the corridor leading to the pharaoh's private library. A place so rarely visited that even the walls seem surprised to have company. You walk, heart still thudding with the echoes of whatever that just was. The floor here is carpeted in soft reeds. The sound of your steps is muffled. The scent changes less. Incense, more dust, old paper, ink, memory. And you realize this is the other half of night. Not the body. The mind. The door creaks open, not on its own, but with your hand, trembling slightly, pushing. Inside, shelves rise like cliffs. Scrolls, stacked in neat rolls, each sealed with a color-coded tag. Blue for theology. Red for medicine. Green for erotic poetry. Yes, erotic poetry. Not hidden. Not shameful. Categorized like science. You run your hand along the shelf and pull one scroll at random. It opens easily, as if expecting you. The script flows like water. You don't know the language, but you understand the rhythm. It speaks of longing, of fruit bitten and forgotten, of kisses that heal more than wounds. One line repeats. The God waits beneath the fig tree, unrobed, unashamed. You wonder who wrote it. A priestess? A scribe in love with someone she could never name? The pharaoh himself? Foucault said that to control a people, you must first teach them what to fear, and then what to desire. But here, in this chamber of scrolls, desire is not taught. It is documented, curated, celebrated. You pick up another scroll. It's thinner, older. It speaks of a queen who ruled for 7 nights, each night taking a new lover chosen not for beauty but for their dreams. The one who dreamed of drowning was dismissed. The one who dreamed of flying was crowned co-ruler for a week. You wonder if this is myth or biography. Then you remember in ancient Egypt there wasn't a difference. A whisper behind you. You turn. Again, no one. But this time, a scroll has fallen to the floor. You pick it up. The seal is gold. The tag is black. It bears no title. Inside, a single line. The mouth of the god is open. Speak. And then silence. Not oppressive. Not eerie. Full. You return the scroll. You step out of the chamber. The air has cooled. Somewhere in the palace, a cat yowls and is quickly hushed. Night deepens. The rituals continue. Not for show. Not for you. But because they must. Because they always have. You pass a window. The Nile glistens below, silver and slow. A boat passes. No oars, no sail, just drift. You watch it vanish. And you know, some journeys can only be taken in sleep. There's a whisper of linen behind you. The faint rustle of cloth on stone, and for a second, you think perhaps another priest has entered. Or one of the Pharaoh's silent attendants has come to escort you back to the visible world. But no footsteps follow, and no shadow joins your own. Instead, you're pulled toward a different wing of the palace, not by instruction or invitation, but by the curious logic of dreams. You find yourself walking through a narrow hallway where the walls slope inward, painted not with scenes of war or gods, but with soft rounded images of daily life. A woman combing her hair while gazing into a polished bronze plate. A man carving hearts into the bark of an acacia tree. 2 children chasing a hoop under the eyes of a nursemaid. These are not official stories. These are what people dream when no one is watching. The hallway leads to a door made of cedar wood, its handle wrapped in braided flax. You push it open and enter a chamber that smells of crushed almonds and dried roses. A breeze slips through an unseen window, and the air feels warmer here, like breath exhaled from a long kiss. The room is not grand. There's no gold, no towering statue. Just a bed, a low table, a bowl of figs, and a woman seated on a cushion near the far wall. She does not startle when you enter. She doesn't rise. She looks at you and smiles, not the smile of welcome, but the smile of someone who already knows why you've come. She is not young, nor old. Her face is ageless in the way that stories are. She wears no crown, but something about her posture makes you straighten. She gestures once, not toward the bed or herself, but toward the low table where 3 objects rest. A blue scarab carved from lapis, a spool of black thread, and a small clay figure shaped like a lioness. She picks up the thread first and begins to wrap it around her wrist, slowly, deliberately, each loop tighter than the last. In this house, she says softly, desire is bound to memory. Her voice doesn't echo. It slides straight into your chest. Everything the Pharaoh dreams must be remembered, but not by him. She nods toward the scarab. He forgets. We carry it. She lifts the lioness last, balancing it in her palm. She comes at night, sometimes as a lover, sometimes a punishment. And you know she means Sekhmet, the goddess with the face of flame, the one whose kisses scorch and who must be calmed by wine before she destroys. Historians still argue whether Sekhmet's role in royal night rites was symbolic or literal, whether her presence in the chamber was summoned through trance or impersonated by trained women of the court. Some say her rituals were suppressed after the Middle Kingdom. Others believe they never stopped. You notice now that the walls of this chamber are covered in faded writing, not hieroglyphs, but something else. Symbols etched with fingers into wet plaster, then hurriedly wiped away, leaving only ghosts behind. They swirl around the room like a language only known in dreams. The woman rises, moving with a fluidity that makes no sound, and begins tracing some of the symbols with her fingertip. Each one she touches reawakens for a second, glowing faintly in the torchlight. You don't need to read them. You feel them. Each is a piece of something forgotten, an embrace once shared, a name once whispered against someone's neck, a scent that vanished the moment it was known. She turns back to you. When the Pharaoh dreams, we listen. Not with ears, with skin. She opens her robe slightly, not indecently, but enough to reveal symbols painted across her collarbone. Not tattoos, temporary, painted fresh each night. You realize they match the symbols on the wall. She is the wall. She is the dream. Peter Webb writes that in many ancient cultures, erotic rituals were used not to heighten sensation, but to blur the line between self and other, to dissolve identity, to make space for gods. The woman before you is no one, and in that, she is everyone. She approaches the bed, smooths the linens, and places the clay lioness at its head. He will lie here, she says, and forget he was ever king. And there's something terrifying in that. Not because power is lost, but because sleep, true sleep, requires surrender. You can't dream if you're holding on. You watch as she prepares the room. She lights a new torch, this one scented with cinnamon and cassia spices said to open the third eye. She places a bowl beneath the bedwater and floating petals, for nightmares. To catch them, to trap what the Pharaoh must never remember. There's a scroll on the table, rolled and sealed. The night scribes record what we cannot, she says. But they write in symbols, not words. No one must ever understand completely. She invites you to lie down. You hesitate, but your body doesn't. The bed accepts you with a softness that feels undeserved. She places the scarab in your palm. It's warm. You're not sure if that's from her touch or your own. She sits beside you, humming, not a melody, a sound that feels older than notes. It makes your heart beat slower. She begins to trace symbols on your forehead, your cheeks, your sternum. With each stroke, a memory surfaces, not yours, someone else's. A kiss beside the Nile, a fevered prayer whispered into a shoulder, a laugh that ends in tears. You are not dreaming, but you are not awake. You are something in between. A vessel, a witness, a page on which a story is written, only to be erased again before dawn. Eleanor Herman, in Sex with Kings, suggests that royal lovers were often chosen not for beauty or skill, but for their ability to disappear, to leave no trace. What use is passion if it becomes rumor? In Egypt, where names carried power even beyond death, the greatest intimacy was silence. And here now you understand. The woman places her hand over your heart. You feel it slow. You feel it echo. You feel it open. She leans down, whispers a single word you don't recognize, and blows gently across your eyelids. You sleep. You wake, or think you do, to the sound of water trickling over polished stone, soft, steady, like someone pouring eternity from one vessel into another. The room is darker than before, not from shadow, but from hue. The color of the air has shifted, deepened into blue-black velvet. You're no longer in the sleeping chamber, nor in that secret room of symbols and whispers. Now you are somewhere else entirely, a sanctuary wrapped in silence so complete, it seems to press gently against your temples. The walls are smooth and warm to the touch, and you notice that the ceiling above you isn't painted, it's open. A perfect rectangle of sky, inked with stars that do not twinkle, but gaze steadily down, like 1,000 patient eyes. This is the night chamber, the innermost layer of the palace, reserved for rituals too fragile for daylight, too personal for record. Few knew it existed. Fewer still returned the same dot in the center of the room. A platform rises, not quite a bed, not quite an altar. Draped in linens dyed with indigo and starlight, it holds a single figure, the Pharaoh, motionless, breathing shallowly. He's wrapped in a robe so fine it barely exists, embroidered with silver thread in the shape of a scarab's wings. His hands are folded across his chest, fingertips resting lightly on a charm shaped like a fig, and next to him sits a woman, not the same as before. This one is younger, perhaps, or simply a different kind of old. Her eyes are closed, and she hums a low tone that makes the tiny vials on the shelf tremble with resonance. Around her, candles burn in shallow bowls of oil, their flames bending slightly toward her mouth as if listening. She is what they called the listener. She has no name. Her lineage is unknown, her role inherited not by blood, but by dream. She is trained not to speak, not to touch, not to record, only to listen. To sit beside the Pharaoh as he sleeps, as he mumbles, sighs, twists, utters names he has forbidden others to say aloud. Her job is not to interpret. It is to carry the weight of unspoken things. Historians still argue whether such women actually existed, or if the listener is merely a symbol used in temple inscriptions to represent divine patience. But fragments of ivory tablets recovered from Abydos describe a maiden of no words who sat beside the throne at midnight to hold what passed from breath to wind. Not a metaphor perhaps, but a memory. She does not react to you. She cannot. Her presence is total, undistracted. Her ears are tuned not to your shuffling steps or your breath catching at the sight of the Pharaoh's stillness, but to something deeper. You inch closer, careful not to disturb the geometry of the room. Everything here is aligned. The position of the stars overhead matches the mural on the eastern wall. Orion, kneeling. Sirius, ascending. The alignment is no accident. Tonight is one of the high nights, when the veil between thought and flesh becomes porous. A night when dreams may become instruction, or prophecy, or curse. Beside the Pharaoh's head, on a small shelf carved into the stone, rests a series of tiny items. A shell, half closed. A coil of red string. A dried petal from a date blossom. A black pebble etched with what looks like the letter M turned sideways. These are not treasures. They are tokens, each representing a person, a moment, a regret perhaps, collected over years and placed here so the Pharaoh's sleep may be weighted, anchored by reminders of who he has been and who he has tried to forget. One story from Asterisk Sex with King's Asterisk tells of a pharaoh, possibly Akhenaten, who kept a secret box of dried petals under his pillow. Each petal tied to the name of a former lover or favored concubine. Not to mourn them, not even to remember them, simply to remind himself that passion, like perfume, fades, but its absence leaves a shape in the air. You imagine the petals here belong to the same box, or perhaps these are new. A fresh inventory of feeling, updated nightly. The listener's hand hovers over the Pharaoh's brow. Not touching, just floating, palm down, fingers spread, as though feeling for tremors in the skin. She shifts slightly, and reaches into a pouch at her side. From it, she withdraws a tiny reed flute. She raises it to her lips, and instead of playing a song, she breathes into it, a long, low exhale that produces no note, but causes the flames in the bowls to dip, then rise again. This breath, historians believe, mimics the sound of wind through papyrus reeds along the Nile. It's meant to ease the dreamer's journey, to keep his soul from snagging on jagged memory. You feel your own body begin to respond to the rhythm. Your muscles release tension you hadn't noticed. Your eyes sting not from tears, but from surrender. You are becoming part of the room, not a guest, a wall. A witness. The listener leans forward and whispers, not words, but a string of vowel sounds, elongated and breathy. A lullaby without a language, a song older than speech. Perhaps one that Isis once sang to Osiris, or that some unknown mother once crooned beside her reed crib. It is not beautiful in the usual sense. It is not meant to be. It is meant to guide the Pharaoh's dreams toward peace or clarity, or resolution. Foucault would say that even silence is structured by power, that in every unspoken word lies a decision about who is allowed to speak, and when, and why. Here, the Pharaoh has chosen silence, chosen to surrender authority to his subconscious, and by extension, to the listener. It is a rare kind of abdication, one no vizier ever witnesses, no scroll records. And yet, it happens every night, faithfully, like the tide. Suddenly, the Pharaoh stirs. Not a startle, a shift. His head turns slightly, his fingers twitch. The listener stops humming. She leans in closer. You lean in too. He mutters a name. One word, slurred, soft. It vanishes almost instantly, swallowed by the weight of the chamber. She hears it. She does not react. But her body shifts ever so slightly. A tilt of the chin, a ripple of awareness. And then she does something surprising. She reaches into her pouch again, retrieves a pinch of blue powder, and tosses it into one of the oil bowls. The flame flares briefly, then returns to its calm, steady glow. The scent of sandalwood fills the room. Sleep deepens. You realize you've been holding your breath. You exhale slowly. The listener resumes her silent vigil. The Pharaoh breathes evenly. The stars overhead continue their slow drift, and you, invisible, forgotten, blessed, drift with them. You feel it before you see it, an odd stillness, like the air itself has paused to listen. Somewhere beyond the sanctuary of the night chamber, a door opens with no creak, and the softest breeze slips in, cool and tinged with something earthy, something not entirely floral. You turn instinctively, and though no one is there yet, you sense movement coming, a shift in the space, a quiet ripple that announces someone different. Not another priest, not another listener. This is someone outside that system, someone whose presence bends the rules. And then she appears. She enters not through a hallway, but through the narrow servants' corridor, yet she walks like a queen. Her robes are simple linen, untouched by dye or gold thread. Her head is uncovered, revealing thick curls that brush her shoulders with every step. But what stops you isn't her walk or her beauty, it's her gaze. She doesn't look around like she's searching. She looks like she already knows. The room adjusts to her arrival like clay beneath a thumbprint, and you realize this is not someone who came to observe. This is someone the Pharaoh requested in a dream. They call her the Night Companion, though her true name is never written, never spoken aloud. It's whispered once into a folded palm before each full moon, then sealed in an amulet worn by the vizier. No one speaks to her during daylight hours. No one sees her eat or sleep or age. She is chosen not for politics, not for alliances or heirs, but for something rarer, something known only by the gods and the Pharaoh's deepest sleep. She is desire without consequence, presence without permanence, a living spell. She walks slowly to the platform where the Pharaoh lies. The listener stands, bows her head, and without a word, retreats into the shadows. Her duty is done. Now the work of forgetting begins. The Night Companion kneels beside the Pharaoh, then reclines beside him, not touching, but close enough that their breath seems to tangle in the air between them. You lean closer. She places her hand just above his, not quite resting on it, fingers curved like a promise. And then she begins to speak, not to you, not to the room, not even to him in the usual sense. Her words are soft, but purposeful. Not modern language, something older. Pre-Egyptian. Maybe. A string of phrases that sound like lullabies, braided with warnings. And with each sentence, the Pharaoh stirs slightly, as if her voice is combing through his memories, rearranging them gently. Historians still argue whether the Night Companion was a sacred prostitute, a high priestess, or simply a myth that survived because the story was too beautiful to kill. But accounts in the history of sexuality suggest she might have been all three at once, a vessel through which the king experienced a forbiddance without guilt, the divine without ritual, and the human without politics. She did not serve the temple nor the crown. She served the silence. And in that silence, entire empires sighed. Her fingers begin to trace shapes on the Pharaoh's chest. Not symbols this time, curves, spirals, invisible lines that follow the bones beneath his skin. She isn't drawing. She's unlocking. The body remembers what the mind forgets, and in Egypt, that was taken seriously. They believed memories, lived in muscle and marrow, that the skin kept secrets long after the lips had forgotten. So she doesn't ask questions. She doesn't need to. She simply lets his body answer. One of her hands moves to his temple. She pauses, listens, then, very gently, she breathes onto his eyelids. You've seen this gesture before in funerary art, where the priest breathes life into the statue of the dead. Only now it's inverted. She's not waking him. She's sinking him deeper. The scent in the room shifts. Frankincense, yes, but also something bitter, ground bark maybe. A powder used in rare spells to erase grief from the heart. The kind of magic not found in temples, but in alleyways and river huts. Passed from grandmother to granddaughter, with a kiss on the wrist and a warning not to speak of it twice. She must be carrying it in a pouch. Or maybe it's simply part of her skin. Part of her presence. And just then, the Pharaoh speaks. Not in sentences, not even in words. A single sound. Deep, aching, not pain, not desire. A mixture. It vibrates through the platform, through your feet, through your chest. You feel it in your teeth. She leans in and places her lips, not on his, but on the space beside his ear. She doesn't kiss, she hums. It's the same pitch. And slowly, his breathing evens again. There's something eerie about watching this, not because it's strange, but because it's familiar. You've seen this before, haven't you? Not in history books, but in moments half remembered. A hand reaching across a bed in the dark, a body curling toward warmth, a silence that says more than language. You realize that what you're witnessing isn't exotic or foreign. It's ancient, yes, but also heartbreakingly human. The night companion now unrolls a strip of linen and ties it loosely around the Pharaoh's wrist. A gesture that mimics a binding spell, but this one's reversible, temporary, a reminder. She binds, but only gently. She leaves room for forgetting. Eleanor Herman once wrote that the most dangerous women in court were not the beautiful ones, nor the clever ones, but the quiet ones, the ones who knew how to be forgotten, and in that forgetting, held power no man could name. The Night Companion is not powerful in the traditional sense. She holds no title, commands no army, signs no scrolls. And yet here she is, alone in a room with the most powerful man in the world. And she is the one writing the night. Outside, the moon shifts. A cloud passes. The shadow on the wall morphs. And you notice a shape you didn't see before. A mural. Faint, almost erased. Two figures lying side by side. One crowned, one not. The crowned figure is asleep. The other is watching. Beneath the mural, a phrase. The god must be seen by no one, but known by someone. You look back to the bed. The Night Companion is now lying beside him, not touching. Not asleep, watching. You don't belong here. But you cannot leave. Oil in the bowls begins to flicker low. And still, no one breathes but them. Somewhere in the palace, a wind chime trembles, not from wind, but from the shift of breath across centuries. The kind of sound that isn't meant to wake you, only to remind you that you're still here, still suspended in the quiet breath of the past. The room around you has changed again, subtly. The air is cooler, the flames dimmer. The Night Companion is gone, or perhaps she never was. The Pharaoh sleeps alone now, but the room is not empty. A new figure stands at the edge of the chamber, draped in indigo robes, his head shaved, his arms marked with ochre stripes like river currents. He is a priest, yes, but not of Ra or Osiris or any god whose name you'd find etched into tomb walls. This is a dream priest, one of the rare few trained not to chant or sacrifice, but to read the sleep of kings like others read stars. He carries no scrolls, no incense, no tools. Just a small, palm-sized tablet coated in beeswax and a reed stylus no longer than a finger. He does not wake the Pharaoh. He waits. For what? You don't know. And then you hear it. A word. Whispered in sleep. Too soft to catch. The priest nods as if it's a command. He moves forward, dips the stylus into the wax, and begins to write not letters, but shapes, patterns, spirals, dots, the language of dreaming. Historians still argue whether such priests were actual members of the court or figments of ceremonial metaphor. But traces of their work exist, slabs of hardened wax found buried in royal tombs, covered in symbols no one has fully deciphered. Some believe they were maps of the underworld. Others, records of prophecies spoken by sleeping mouths. One theory suggests that a dream priest once prevented a war by interpreting a king's nightmare not as a vision of defeat, but a warning against betrayal. That king dismissed his general. The general disappeared. Peace held for another year. Priest now pauses. He closes his eyes. And then, gently, he begins to hum. The tone is low, circular, almost imperceptible. Not a song. A setting. A way to shift the atmosphere so that the dream can breathe. You glance at the Pharaoh. He turns in his sleep. His mouth twitches. Another word escapes. The priest records. He is not surprised. This is the rhythm of his calling. Not to interfere. Not to control. But to catch. You notice the bowl of petals beside the bed now. Most of the flowers have sunk beneath the water. Only one still floats. A pale yellow lotus, its petals barely open. A sign, perhaps, of something not yet revealed. The priest moves to it, touches the edge of the bowl, and with the same stylus, draws a single circle in the water. The surface ripples outward. He returns to his post and waits. The air hums with stillness. Not dead silence, something richer. A silence you can lean into. A silence where meaning is shaped. And then softly, like a curtain lifting, the door to the chamber opens again. This time, the figure who enters is unexpected. Small, slight, draped in red with a sash of gold. A boy, barefoot, no older than 12. His face is smooth, but his eyes are ancient. He carries a scroll, tightly wound and sealed with blue wax. He walks to the dream priest, bows once, and hands it over. The priest accepts it without question, breaks the seal, and unrolls the parchment. He reads it, slowly, then nods. He doesn't speak, but his breath shifts. You sense that something important has just been decided. The boy turns and leaves. No words, no backward glance. The scroll is now placed beside the Pharaoh's head. A message or a map to be read upon waking. Or maybe never. Peter Webb describes similar rites in other ancient cultures, Sumerian, Mycenaean, where dream messages were delivered through child messengers, believed to be closer to the divine, untouched by the noise of adulthood. Their names were never recorded. Their voices were rarely heard. And yet, they carried the weight of empires in their arms. The priest now steps back. His work is done. But the ritual is not over. From a narrow slit in the ceiling, a single shaft of moonlight touches the floor, marking a thin line across the stone. Slowly, that line begins to move. This is no accident. The chamber was built to track the passage of lunar light, a kind of clock that doesn't tick but glides. When the beam reaches the foot of the bed, a new figure enters. You recognize her. The queen, not the companion. Not the listener. The queen herself. Crowned, robed in linen woven with papyrus threads. Her eyes lined with kohl that deepens there. Command. She does not hurry. She walks like she owns not just the room, but the night itself. She kneels at the edge of the platform. And for the first time, the Pharaoh opens his eyes. They do not speak. They don't need to. There is a pause heavy with meaning. A pause weighted with years of ceremony, of duty, of nights spent apart in rooms filled with other people's dreams. And yet tonight, she is here. Not for politics, not for appearance. For truth, she reaches. forward and places her hand atop his. He doesn't move. She doesn't speak, but their fingers press. Just once. It's enough. The wax tablet is removed. The scroll is carried away. The bowl of petals is emptied into a copper basin and taken. Outside, where it will be buried at dawn. Nothing from this night will remain except what lingers on skin and in the crease of breath. Eleanor Herman tells us that queens, especially in ancient Egypt, often held more power than recorded power, not in law, but in presence. The ability to silence a room with a glance, to soothe a troubled king without a single word, to step into a sacred space and be accepted without challenge. Tonight, you see it, not in decree. In devotion, the moonline reaches the far wall. The ritual ends. The queen kisses her husband's forehead, once, light as dust. Then she leaves, and for the first time since sunset, the chamber is truly still. It begins with footsteps, bare, rhythmic, measured like a heartbeat, but not walking toward you. They are walking away, down a narrow flight of stairs, beneath the palace floor, into a world few knew existed and even fewer returned from. You follow, compelled by something beyond curiosity. Perhaps it's the scent, a whisper of myrrh and beeswax drifting down the stairwell, or maybe it's the sound, that soft pat-pat of feet against stone that seems to call without calling. You descend. The air grows cooler, thicker, but not stale. It's the kind of air that's been holding its breath for centuries. At the bottom of the stairs is a small chamber carved directly into the bedrock. No decorations, no gold, no hieroglyphs. Just a single low table with a bowl in the center, filled not with water, but with sand so fine it moves like liquid. Around the bowl are 7 stones, each marked with symbols you don't recognize. One of them pulses faintly in the low candlelight, like a heartbeat slowed to match the rhythm of the earth. And beside the table, sitting cross-legged, is a woman. Her skin is dark, her hair wrapped in simple linen, and her hands are coated with sand, as if she's been shaping something invisible for hours. She doesn't look up. She doesn't need to. She knows you're there. She lifts a hand and with her finger begins to draw in the sand, slow, looping gestures, one after the other, like waves rolling in from a distant sea. As she draws, she speaks. Not loudly, not directly. More like she's speaking to the chamber itself. He forgets. Each morning, she says, and so we must remember each night. You understand immediately. This is where the forgotten dreams go. Historians still debate the existence of dream collectors in ancient Egyptian ritual life. Some argue they were priestesses of the goddess Nephthys, sister of Isis, keeper of secrets and shadows. Others believe they were simply midwives of the subconscious, women trained to gather fragments of the king's sleep and bury them in ritual patterns. But texts from the Temple of Edfu mention a sect called the Bearers of Night Memory, women who were never seen during the day, but who emerged after dusk to collect dreams and preserve balance between thought and reality. The woman before you might be one of them. Or perhaps she's their last echo. She traces a circle, then a spiral, then a series of dots. She pauses. This one, she murmurs, was about drowning. Again, she brushes it away. Begins another. A tree, a snake, a pair of hands holding a flame. That one he will not remember, but it will shape his choices by noon. You move closer. Her voice is not soft, but it's slow. It moves like honey over hot bread, thick and lingering. She points to a symbol, 2 wavy lines beneath a crescent moon. That one is not his, she says. That one belongs to her. You don't need to ask who she means. You remember the night companion, her breath, her hands, her absence. The dream did not leave with her. It stayed, leaking into the Pharaoh's mind like wine into cloth. On the wall behind the woman are hundreds of marks, some scratched, some painted, others burned. You realize each one is a night. A record not in words, but in memory. This is the true archive of the Pharaoh's soul. Not scrolls in golden cases, these smudges, these shapes, these dreams. She reaches for one of the stones around the bowl, lifts it, and places it over a fresh symbol. That one must be kept, she says. It contains a warning. She closes her eyes. Her lips move in silent chant. The stone glows faintly, then fades, sealed. You realize you've been holding your breath again. You let it out slowly, then she looks at you. Finally, her eyes are wide, dark, unreadable. She studies your face like she's trying to remember a name she's never heard. You're not one of them, she says quietly. Not a priest. Not a watcher. You're something else. You nod, though you don't know why. She nods back, not with approval, but with understanding. Then you may stay, but only until dawn. She continues drawing. A boat, a broken chain. She frowns. This one will try to return. We must bury it deep. She presses both palms into the sand, then lifts them. The symbol is gone. You feel its absence like a missed step in the dark. Then she begins again, over and over. Each symbol like a key turning in a lock you cannot see. You wonder how long she's been doing this. How many nights she stayed awake while the rest of the palace slept. She doesn't look tired. She looks eternal. Foucault might argue that memory, when controlled, becomes a form of discipline. That the ability to choose what is remembered and what is not is the ultimate expression of power. But this woman isn't choosing. She's deciphering. Her job is not to judge the dream, only to place it in the right chamber of the unconscious. Like a librarian of the soul, the candles flicker low. She lifts her head. It's time, she says. He will begin to stir. She wipes the bowl clean. All the symbols vanish. The stones are placed back in their ring. The chamber goes still. She rises, dusts her hands, and walks to the wall. She adds one more mark, a tiny X scratched with a thumbnail. Tonight has been recorded, not for history. For balance. You follow her back up the stairs. The sky is paler now. The stars have thinned. Birds call softly from the palms. The palace begins to breathe again, slowly, like a beast waking from deep hibernation. Servants move silently through corridors. Water is poured. Sand is swept. But no one speaks. The woman disappears behind a curtain. Not with fanfare, with finality. You stand alone now, and behind you, far down the corridor, the Pharaoh begins to dream again. It starts with a whisper, not from a mouth, but from the stone itself. A vibration under your feet, faint and rhythmic, like breath caught in limestone ribs. You step into a courtyard you haven't seen before, open to the sky, walled with smooth alabaster that catches the pink tint of the coming dawn. In the center, a low pool reflects the first light like a secret. But it's not the light that catches your eye, it's the procession. Silent, barefoot, and hooded, 6 figures move slowly around the pool, each holding a different item: a copper mirror, a bundle of reeds, a clay mask, a necklace made of date pits, a pair of sandals with broken straps, and last, a tiny jar sealed with wax. None of these seem valuable. None of them shine. Yet the figures move like they are cradling dynasties. You realize with a start that this is the ritual of the forgotten. The ceremony meant to cleanse the Pharaoh's subconscious from attachments that no longer serve him. Attachments he may not even remember having. The pool is not decorative, it's ceremonial. At sunrise, the items will be submerged, not to be destroyed, but to be erased. And the memory they represent, whether a woman's laugh, a moment of weakness, a word spoken in anger, will dissolve with them. This is how kings remain kings. Not by remembering everything, but by forgetting just enough. Each figure steps to the edge, lowers their object into the water, and recites a phrase. You can't hear the words. You're not supposed to. They aren't meant for ears. They're meant for what lies just beneath the skin, where desire and regret coil like sleeping serpents. The fifth figure, the one with the sandals, hesitates. Just a second, and you feel it's some pain not yet ready to leave. But the figure continues. The sandals vanish beneath the surface. Historians have always speculated about this ritual, its purpose, its power. Was it symbolic? Therapeutic? Did it really shape the king's memory, or merely offer the illusion of choice? The truth, as always, is stranger. A fragment found in a priest's tomb describes how one pharaoh began to dream of a woman he had never known again and again, over years, until one night, during this very ritual, a wax-sealed jar was lowered into the pool. The dream stopped, his health improved, his judgment sharpened, but he never smiled again. Sometimes the cost of forgetting is not peace, but the loss of something you never realized you treasured. The sixth figure now steps forward with the sealed jar. It's so small it could fit in a closed fist, and yet, as it's lowered into the pool, you feel the temperature shift. The surface ripples. A wind brushes your cheek. It's not dramatic, but it is decisive. Something has just ended. And then, from the far side of the courtyard, comes a figure you did not expect. An old man, stooped but steady, dressed in linen that smells of ink and fire. He carries a scroll one so long it drags behind him like a bridal veil. He's the keeper of the night ledger, the one responsible for recording each ritual, not with detail, but with rhythm. His script is not words, it's patterns. A line for each breath held, a swirl for each name unspoken, a jagged dash for every suppressed cry. He kneels by the pool, dips the edge of the scroll into the water, then lays it out to dry in the sun. This will become part of the archive, rolled into the great vault beneath the temple, unread by any, but present always. You look again at the water. The pool now reflects only the sky. The objects are gone, the courtyard clears, the procession ends, and behind you, a bell rings soft and far, like a bronze sigh. Morning is close. And with morning, the pharaoh must wake, but not yet. There is one more room. You follow a narrow hallway, its walls lined with tiny alcoves. In each one, a figurine sits. Cats, birds, fish, men with jackal heads, women with crocodile tails. These are the forgotten gods. The ones no longer worshipped, but still remembered just enough to be dangerous. Offerings of old fears, or warnings. Each figurine wears a different expression, some serene, some snarling. They are not meant to be honored. They are meant to be acknowledged. This is the Hall of Unwanted Dreams down at the end of the corridor. A final door, no carvings. Just a smear of black paint across the frame. You enter. Inside, a single figure kneels before a plain stone tablet. A woman again, but different. Dressed in a robe dyed with ashes and marked with a circle on her forehead. She is the nullifier. Her role, to erase. Not with fire, not with ink, but with silence. She listens to the dreams no one else will. The ones that shouldn't exist. The ones that bring shame or confusion or madness. Her ears are covered in layers of gauze, not to block sound, but to ensure the dream has to work to be heard. Only the ones that insist are allowed to be kept. The others? She draws a breath and exhales through her nose, and they vanish. Peter Webb once theorized that ancient rites of silence were not about denial, but refinement. That by choosing which dreams to forget and which to repeat, a society trains its own subconscious. Egypt, more than any other culture, seems to have understood this. The nullifier now reaches for a jar filled with black sand. She sprinkles it over the stone. The sound is soft like rain falling on parchment. She closes her eyes. For a long time nothing happens, and then you feel it. One of your own memories, faint, long buried, rises unbidden. A face, a gesture, a regret. You didn't expect to feel anything. You didn't expect to be part of this, but somehow you are. The room is watching you now, waiting. Do you want to forget? The nullifier opens her eyes. They are silver in the buzz. Light, she sees you, really sees you. And for a moment, you feel weightless. As if the memory has already left. She nods once. It is done. You step back into the hallway, into the courtyard, into the palace. The sky is now lavender. The torches are out. The wind smells like day. And the Pharaoh is waking. The first rays of sun do not enter the Pharaoh's chamber directly. They are filtered through layers of gauze, amber-tinted shutters, and a sequence of slowly opening doors that ensure dawn arrives as a suggestion, not an announcement. You watch as that first soft beam slides across the polished floor like honey spilled from a golden bowl. The room glows but does not brighten. This is by design. The Pharaoh must be eased into waking, not startled by it. After all, he has not just been sleeping. He has been communing, traveling, forgetting, dreaming on behalf of the state. You hear the faintest rustle, linen sheets brushing against bronze skin, the shift of muscle under a layer of sacred oil, and then his eyes, opening slowly, as if they too had been elsewhere and are now returning reluctantly. He does not speak. No one does. Speech before sunrise is forbidden. The first hour belongs to silence. Attendants begin to enter the chamber like shadows, each assigned to a specific motion. One offers a damp cloth infused with hibiscus to wipe the corners of the eyes. Another lifts a tiny cup of honey-thick wine to the Pharaoh's lips. Just one sip, not for thirst, but for memory. A third combs through the Pharaoh's hair with a comb made of ivory and woven reeds. Every action is ceremonial, but none of it is forced. The body responds as if it has done this 1,000 times, and will do it 1,000 more. Which it has. And it will. And yet something's changed. You can see it in his expression. Not alarm, not confusion. Just a subtle pause. A hesitation before swallowing the wine. A flicker in the eye as the comb passes through a knot that wasn't there yesterday. He remembers something, not a dream. Not an image, a sensation. Like the warmth of a breath across his cheek. A weight beside him in the bed. But the room offers no confirmation. The attendants do not speak. The linen is smooth. The candles have burned low. Whatever happened last night has dissolved into the rituals of mourning, like salt and water. He sits up, slowly, carefully, as if his spine is remembering how to carry the weight of being Pharaoh, the god in man, the ruler of both upper and lower Egypt, a title etched in stone, but felt most keenly in the neck, the shoulders, the breath. The robe he is given now is not the soft white of night, but the rigid gold-threaded linen of daylight authority. It feels heavier than it should, but he does not protest. This is the price of waking. The attendants step back. The dream scribes arrive. 3 young men, bare-chested, each carrying a scroll and stylus. They do not speak. They kneel, poised to write. One of them lights a cone of incense made from crushed juniper and dried blue lotus. The scent curls around the room like a question. The Pharaoh is not obligated to share his dreams. But if he does, they will be recorded, translated into symbols, broken into rhythms, stored in the archives never seen by common eyes. He looks at the scribes, then at the scrolls, then away. I remember. The sound of water, he says. Scribes write it down instantly. Water and a name. They wait, but I cannot say it aloud, he adds. They write again. A name unspoken. He falls silent. Not out of reluctance. Out of reverence. Historians still debate whether pharaohs truly remembered their dreams, or if they were fed memories by the priesthood to align with the political needs of the day. One theory suggests a special tincture was added to the night. Wine and herb that softens the boundary between fantasy and suggestion. Another theory claims certain phrases whispered during the rituals implanted ideas that later emerged as visions. But watching him now, you feel no manipulation. This is not performance. This is someone trying to carry a dream through the narrow gate of waking thought. And finding it crumbles in the daylight, the scribes bow and depart. Their scrolls will be stored in the Hall of Echoes, a library beneath the palace where only the blind are allowed to read. It is believed that those who cannot see are better able to hear what dreams are trying to say. Now comes the purification. The bath is drawn not hot this time, but cool, refreshing, laced with mint and basil, a symbol of renewal. The Pharaoh is led there, stripped gently, his night robe folded and burned as he enters the water. He sinks in with a sigh, not dramatic, just human. This, perhaps, is the most honest moment of his day. And here, you notice something curious. On his wrist, a faint ring where a linen cord once rested. No mark from sleepwear, no bruise. Just the kind of impression left by a ribbon gently tied and worn through the night. He touches it absent-mindedly, frowns, then lets it go. After the bath, the sacred oils are applied. Not the erotic myrrh of evening, but the sharp, clarifying cedar of command. Each oil has a purpose, one to strengthen memory, one to sharpen focus, one to protect against envy. As they are rubbed into his arms, his back, his temples, he recites a mantra. I am the morning. I am the law. I am the river that does not forget. But you know the truth. The river forgets every day. That's what keeps it moving. He dresses, the kilt, the pectoral collar, the sandals, the crown. Bit by bit, the man disappears, and the symbol is reborn. Outside, the palace awakens. Priests chant, servants sweep. Courtiers gather like birds around a harvest. The vizier waits by the courtyard with the day's decrees. Ambassadors stand ready with tribute. Children run barefoot along the outer halls, unaware that the ruler of their world has only just returned from the edges of himself. And yet, as the Pharaoh steps into the sun, his face is calm. His eyes are bright. Whatever else may come, rebellions, droughts, betrayals, he has survived the night, and the night has survived him. The palace is alive now, vibrating softly with the hum of morning rituals. Sandals whisper across polished stone, braziers flicker. Beside open colonnades, and the fragrance of citrus blossoms mingles with hot bread, carried on platters of beaten bronze. But beyond the great halls and sunlit courts, tucked behind a narrow passage that most have forgotten, there waits a door. A plain one, unmarked, its wood cracked with age, its frame slightly warped as if trying to push itself closed against the years. No guards stand watch. No scribe records its threshold. And yet within, something is preserved. Not treasure. Not knowledge. Something rarer. Something inconvenient. This is the chamber of her sleep. You push the door gently, and it opens with the hush of fabric sliding across skin. Inside, it's dim, but not dark. The room is round, and its ceiling is domed like a womb. Painted not with constellations, but with flowers, poppies, lotuses. Mandrake leaves all rendered in delicate strokes, some faded to the color of old parchment, others vivid as if just painted. And in the center of the room, on a low bed made of sycamore, lies the queen. Not the living one. Not the reigning consort. This queen has been dead for years, and yet she sleeps. Her body is wrapped not in bandages, but in linen so fine they shift with the breath of the room. Her face is visible, serene, untouched by decay. A soft sheen lingers on her skin, as if she had just stepped out of the bath. You notice that a thin thread runs from her right wrist to a copper bowl set beside the bed, filled with water and lotus petals. Every few moments, a ripple crosses the bowl's surface, as if something unseen has tugged on the thread. This is no tomb. This is no display. This is preservation of a different kind. The legend calls her Nezat, beloved of the night, the Pharaoh's first wife. Not chosen for politics nor wealth, but for her ability to soothe him, to draw sleep from his troubled mind like poison from a wound. She died young during the eclipse, they say. But her body was never taken to the Valley of the Queens. Instead, it was placed here, so the king could still sleep, so she could dream on his behalf. And every night, it is believed, the Pharaoh's dreams pass through that thread, into the bowl, into her. Historians dismiss this tale as poetic embellishment. There is no formal record of Neset, no cartouche bearing her name, but the records are not the only truth. A fragment of a priest's diary, hidden in the folds of a burial shroud, mentions she who sleeps still by the copper moon, in the chamber without time. That's here. This is her. You walk slowly around the bed. Her hands are folded neatly, fingers curled inward as if grasping something small and precious. Her lips are slightly parted. You lean closer, and for the briefest moment, you think you hear a name whispered on her exhale. It's not yours. It's not his. It's someone else's. Perhaps no one living. At the foot of her bed is a niche carved into the wall, where objects have been placed. A child's bracelet, a broken ring, a dried fig still wrapped in cloth. Offerings, but not ritual ones. These are memories, pieces of her life, left behind not for gods, but for herself. Things that might help her dream better, or dream more kindly. You wonder who brings them. No one is assigned, no duty demands it. And yet, they appear. A small stool sits in the corner, worn, smooth. Someone sits here regularly. Perhaps the Pharaoh himself. Perhaps someone else keeping vigil, not out of hope, not out of grief, out of need. One story in the erotic spirit through history speaks of ancient queens who were buried not with gold or weapons, but with scent-perfumed cloth, meant to trigger memory in the afterlife. Scents tied to lovers, children, gardens. The idea was that even in death, the body could respond to memory, and in doing so, remain partially awake. Looking at Neset, you wonder if this is what's happening. If she dreams not just for him, but for all of Egypt, carrying its subconscious, like a mother carries a restless child. A breeze stirs the petals in the copper bowl. You watch as a single petal rises, floats for a moment, then settles again. The thread does not move. The queen's face remains unchanged, and yet something inside the room has shifted. You feel it not in your mind, but in your skin. Like walking into a room where someone has just left, their presence still warm in the air. Foucault once mused that true power lies not in what is visible, but in what is hidden and in who controls that boundary. This chamber is precisely that. A boundary not of space, but of state. Not alive, not dead. A place held in suspension. A sacred pause. You kneel beside the bed, and as you do, a faint hum begins. You don't know where it comes from. Not the walls. Not the bowl. Not your own throat. It surrounds you like a lullaby sung from far away. A frequency, not a tune, and within it, a rhythm. A heartbeat, not quite your own, not quite hers, not quite his. A rhythm that has pulsed through this palace for generations, unnoticed but necessary. You rise reluctantly, you step back. The air thickens slightly, as if asking you to linger. But the sun outside is climbing. The day must begin. And so must forgetting. At the door, you pause. You glance back. And in the softest of morning shadows, you swear only for an instant that her fingers moved. You don't tell anyone. You don't speak of this room. But that night, when you close your eyes, you dream of copper bowls, of petals that float, and of names whispered with no breath at all. It begins with a crackle, not thunder. Not fire, but the soft, dry sound of parchment unrolling itself somewhere nearby, as if an invisible hand is preparing to read something you were never meant to hear. You follow the sound through a corridor lined with carved pillars shaped like papyrus stalks, their painted green long faded to ghostly beige. The air grows heavier, perfumed with frankincense and something metallic iron, perhaps, or the scent of old ink. This part of the palace doesn't feel like a home anymore. It feels like a memory waiting to be misremembered. You arrive at an open arch that leads into a circular chamber, dimly lit by a ring of oil lamps floating on the surface of a shallow pool. Each lamp flickers independently, casting dancing shadows across the ceiling, where hundreds of snakes are painted in spirals writhing, unblinking, hypnotic. And in the center of the room stands a woman you haven't seen before. She is tall, her skin painted with a sheen of golden powder that catches the light with every movement, and in her hands, she holds a live serpent. It coils around her wrist, like a silk ribbon, its tongue flicking toward the air in slow, deliberate rhythm. She sees you, and she smiles not with warmth, but with recognition, as if you finally arrived where you were always meant to be. The serpent remembers what the Pharaoh forgets, she says. That is why we keep them close. She lifts the snake toward her face, and it gently brushes her cheek. She does not flinch. This is the chamber of dream sorcery, a place that exists on no map, spoken of only in murmurs, even among priests. It is said that within these walls, the deepest fears and hungers of the king are distilled, not with ink, but with venom. The serpent, in Egyptian lore, is not merely a symbol of danger. It is a vessel of wisdom, a keeper of secrets too potent to be spoken aloud. Here, serpents are not charmed, they are consulted. The woman, her name is lost to history, perhaps never written, moves toward the pool and lowers the snake into the water. It glides across the surface, unbothered by the flames. Each lamp flickers as it passes, as though responding to the creature's passage. The room falls silent, and then she turns back to you. He dreamt of drowning again, she says. But this time he called out. She walks to a small table and unwraps a bundle of papyrus. Inside is a tongue-dry, brittle, clearly not human. From a cobra, she explains. Once dipped in the dreamer's wine, it speaks the truths he dares not say. She places the tongue into a clay bowl and pours in a dark liquid. A thin smoke rises. The scent is unbearable, rot and sweetness in equal measure. You step back, but she does not move. This is what fear smells like, she says softly. When a god forgets what it means to bleed, historians rarely mention this chamber. Perhaps they didn't know of it. Perhaps they were warned away. But buried in one of Michel Foucault's less cited notebooks is a reference to an Egyptian rite in which serpents were kept not as guards, but as interpreters. The king's silence is often a lie, he wrote. But the snake's silence is a record. You watch as the smoke thickens and begins to form vague shapes, first a crown, then a flame, then a figure on their knees. He fears the day she will not come back, the woman says. You know who she means, the night companion. Her absence lingers like humidity, unseen, but inescapable. She offers you the bowl. Smell it again. You hesitate, but obey. This time the scent has changed. It is no longer sour. It is familiar, a memory perhaps of a summer morning, of sunlight on skin, of laughter that ended too soon. You pull away. She nods. The dream has passed to you. That means it is ready to be forgotten. She reaches for a black cloth and gently covers the bowl. The smoke vanishes instantly. The snake, now coiled beside the pool, flicks its tail once and stills. Ceremony complete. She moves to a shelf behind her, selects a thin reed, and dips it into the ink pot beside a sheet of gold leaf. With quick, elegant strokes, she writes something small, tight, unreadable. Then she folds the leaf and places it into a hollow bead carved from onyx. She hands it to you. Swallow it, she says, so it cannot return. You hesitate. This seems extreme, but something in her eyes convinces you. You place the bead on your tongue. It tastes of salt and copper and something floral, something like the memory of love left out in the sun. You swallow. It sticks for a moment. Then it's gone. She turns away. You'll dream of snakes tonight, she says. That's expected. You begin to ask what it means. but she is already kneeling, whispering to the serpent in a language older than stone. As you exit the chamber, the warmth of day strikes your skin like a soft rebuke. The palace is bustling now. Music drifts from a nearby courtyard. Dancers are rehearsing for a festival. Children laugh and chase birds across the mosaic tiles. The world is spinning forward, brightly, cleanly, as if the night never happened. And yet you walk with a slowness you did not have before. Each step carries more weight, as though the dreams of a king have threaded themselves into your own sinew. You look down and notice a faint mark on your wrist, the shape of a spiral, like a serpent curling to sleep. You touch it. It's warm. The woman's voice lingers in your mind. The serpent remembers. And tonight, when the Pharaoh lies down, when the oil lamps are lit and the curtains drawn, when the blue lotus is steeped and the fan begins to sway again, the dream he dreams will be a little lighter, a little clearer, because you carried the venom for him, and the snake has gone quiet. You hear it before you feel it in echo, soft and percussive, not music exactly, but the idea of music. A rhythm made not by instruments, but by breath, a low exhale, a subtle pulse, a heartbeat amplified. In stone, you follow it instinctively, like a moth drawn toward warmth. This time the corridor curves inward, spiraling like the shell of a chambered nautilus, guiding you not through grandeur, but intimacy. The walls here are carved with creatures, frogs, ibises, jackals mid-step, all rendered in fluid lines. There, eyes seem to track you, not with suspicion, but with quiet understanding. These are not symbols of power. These are guardians of secrets. You reach the final door and push it open with your palm, and the first thing that hits you is the scent suite. Spiced, unmistakable. Cinnamon baked into clay, warmed by breath. The scent of bodies in rest, in worship, in want. This is the bedchamber of divine flesh. No throne here, no canopy, no guards. Just a single low platform, circular. Its mattress so thin it might as well be air, covered in linen dyed the shade of crushed dates. The air is humid. The walls sweat. And in the center of the platform is the bed itself, not wood or metal, but stone, carved with unrelenting care into the shape of a lioness mid-pounce. Her eyes are rubies, her teeth obsidian, but it is her spine arched and carved with glyphs that dominates the room. Her back forms the place where a king lies, each vertebra corresponding to a ritual. Her tail curls upward, forming a headrest. She is not a bed. She is an invitation. And a warning. You approach slowly, as if your footsteps might offend her. At the edge of the platform sits a man. Not the Pharaoh, older, slender, robed in ochre and green, the colors of regeneration. His fingers are stained with henna, and his eyes are closed. He is humming, but it is not music, it is breath, controlled and released like incense. This is where he dreams most deeply, the man says, not opening his eyes, when the lioness accepts him. You know at once he speaks of Sekhmet, the fierce, beautiful goddess of war and healing, whose embrace both incinerates and mends. Not every pharaoh is allowed, he adds. Only those who understand that being devoured is sometimes a kind of love. He rises finally and gestures for you to lie on the stone bed. Touch it, he says. You must feel what it means. To surrender. You hesitate, but then you do, and it is warm. Almost alive. The stone exhales beneath you. Not metaphorically, not symbolically, actually. Your heartbeat aligns with something deeper, older. You see Flash's eyes rimmed in black, lips stained with pomegranate, nails scratching prayers into skin. This is not pleasure. This is invocation, the ritual of... The bed is rarely spoken of in formal records. Even sex with kings dances around it, referring only to moments of carnal meditation and temple practices involving statues and human proxies. But there are stories passed down in hushed voices by midwives and herb women of pharaohs, who lay upon the back of the lioness not to sleep, but to be judged, to be broken open like pomegranates so their seeds could be counted by the gods. The man moves around the room now, lighting candles made from beeswax and goat tallow. Their scent deepens the air, sharpens your thoughts. In each flame, you see a gesture, a memory, a body arching, a throat whispering, a tongue pressed against a shoulder in prayer. The bed doesn't just hold dreams, it absorbs them, stores them, feeds them back, night after night, reshaped by need. He returns and places a stone in your palm, smooth, oval, heavy. "This is your name," he says. "Not the one you answer to, the one you sweat in." He places a matching stone in the bed's center, just below where the pharaoh's heart would rest. Each night, a name is forgotten. Each morning, a new one is whispered. He points to a row of tiny holes drilled into the base of the bed. That's where the names go, into the lioness, into her belly, and now you see them. Hundreds of stones piled neatly beneath the bed, each one a name that no longer exists. You wonder how many belong to lovers, to enemies, to selves long outgrown. He speaks again. Sometimes when the pharaoh dreams of her, he wakes with claw marks on his chest. You glance at his hands. His fingers are scarred, not from injury, from ritual, from offering. He removes a scroll from a satchel beside the bed, unrolls it. The text is written in vertical spirals, wrapping inward like a snake devouring itself. He begins to read aloud, but you understand none of it, and yet your body responds. Your mouth goes dry, your chest warms, your breath slows. The words, he explains, mean nothing unless spoken over flesh. He places a hand on your shoulder, over living bone. Suddenly, the bed's warmth increases, just slightly, but enough to know it has heard. It is listening. This is the bed the pharaoh returns to when the court grows too loud, when diplomacy dulls the blade of his desire. This is where he remembers that his body is also a temple. That power is not only in decree, but in surrender. That the flesh must be worshipped, not simply worn. The man now folds the scroll, places it under the lioness's paw, and exhales a final breath over your face. It smells of clove and date syrup, sweet, deep. Final dot, you rise slowly. You feel lighter, as though something has been drawn out of you, not taken. Honored, remembered. He smiles for the first time. "She's accepted you," he says. "You'll dream more clearly now." You exit the chamber into the rising sun. The world has shifted. The sky is still pink. The scent of spices still lingers. But your skin hums with knowing, and tonight, when the pharaoh lies down, when the linen is smoothed, when the last light dims and silence folds in around him like a warm hand, he will return to her, to the lioness, to the bed, to the name he longer remembers, but always answers to. You smell it before you see it, a drift of damp soil, bruised grass, and something sharp and green like fresh-cut palm. The scent doesn't belong in the palace. It belongs outdoors. Yet it coils down the hallway like a vine, pulling you gently, insistently, toward an arched doorway covered in gauze, so thin it shimmers with every breath of air. You pass through it and step into the garden the scribes never mentioned. The one hidden behind the temple of Mat, known only to the old women who sweep its paths, and the eunuchs who bring water in the heat of midday. This is no royal courtyard, no public display of orchids and fountains. This is a grove, untamed, unmeasured, alive. Date palms lean in conspiratorially. Sycamores twist into strange shapes as if reacting to secrets whispered too close. And near, the center, half swallowed by vines and tall reeds, is a low stone bench carved with an inscription you cannot read. Someone has placed a bowl of honey beside it, half full, already thickening in the sun. A gift, maybe. or a bribe. This is where the pharaoh came when he wanted to disappear. Not for sleep. For something messier. For intimacy with no witnesses. For meetings arranged by gesture, not decree. Here, he was not Pharaoh, not Horus, not even man. Just desire wearing sandals, cloaked in linen. You kneel beside the bench and run your fingers across its surface. It's smooth, worn. Someone sat here often. Perhaps with a lover curled into the crook of one arm. Or perhaps alone, trying to remember the face of someone who once laughed here, whose laughter now only visits in dreams. The trees here bloom. With strange timing. You notice one, a fig tree, heavy with fruit even though the season is wrong. Beneath it, scattered pits. A few still stained with wine-dark pulp. You imagine the pharaoh reaching up, biting into one, juice dripping onto his chest. You imagine fingers not his catching the drops, lifting them to a mouth, sharing a sweetness forbidden indoors. Love outside the walls wasn't scandal, it was necessity. The weight of the crown could only be removed in the open, where no walls echoed back judgment. Eleanor Herman tells us that many kings had private gardens where only a select few were allowed. Some were official consorts, others were not. And while their names are lost to ceremony, their footprints remain in worn stone, in petals pressed between the pages of unrecorded nights. Here, under this sky, the pharaoh's hunger was neither ritual nor duty. It was real. And that reality made him vulnerable. Which is why this place is so carefully hidden. A woman appears not from the path, but from the trees. Her feet are bare, her dress wet from the knees down. She carries a reed basket filled with pomegranates, and without speaking, begins to scatter them gently beneath the trees. Not in piles, one here, one there. A trail, like crumbs in a myth. You watch as birds begin to land, first one, then two, then more. Small, brown, silent. They peck at the seeds, flitting from branch to branch. She hums as she moves, not a song, a rhythm, a pattern. And suddenly you realize she's setting a scene, rebuilding something that once happened here. You step closer, and she looks up. Her eyes are green gold, sunlit and wet. He met her here, she says, not asking. The one he shouldn't have touched. The one whose scent lingered on his fingers long after the bath. The one they erased from the scrolls, but not from his dreams. She places the last pomegranate at the foot of the fig tree. They never kissed in the palace, she adds. Only here, where the air didn't report back. She sits on the bench, cross-legged, and begins to sort dried herbs from a pouch: basil, hibiscus, mint. He brought her tea, she continues. Brewed himself, or claimed he did. She laughs. It's not cruel, just honest. They watched the stars through the gaps in the branches. She told him stories that made him forget he was king. And that was why she had to go. Historians still argue whether this woman existed. Some say she was a slave who seduced her way into the pharaoh's affections. Others suggest she was a rival queen in disguise, sent to beguile and distract. But one theory, found only in the margins of Peter Webb's lesser-known essays, offers something stranger, that she was not real at all. That she was a recurring dream he began to seek in waking hours. That he created this garden to find her. That others, sensing his devotion, played her role to soothe him. But none of them stayed. The woman beside you sprinkles the herbs into a small pot of water and lights a flame beneath it. The scent rises herbal, smoky, comforting. He came back here after they buried her, she says. Sat under that tree. Didn't speak, just stared at the sky until dawn. Then he left. And he never returned. She pours the tea into 2 cups, hands you one. It's bitter, but not unpleasant. You drink dot as the sun climbs higher. The air thickens with memory. You see it now, glimpses between the branches. Fingers tangled in hair. A robe slipping off one shoulder. A laugh chased by a sigh. The smell of sweat in moonlight. This was not a place of scandal, it was sacred. Because it was secret, because no one here bowed. Because here, they were equals. She rises, gathers the empty cups, and walks back into the trees. No farewell. Just absence. You remain. The wind shifts. And somewhere beneath the fig tree, a petal falls from a blossom that wasn't there a moment ago. You don't pick it up. Some things are meant to remain where they land. It comes to you slowly. Like steam rising from warm stone, the realization that not all of the Pharaoh's secrets were kept in temples or under lock and seal. Some were hidden in plain sight, worn not in gold, but in gesture. You're walking now through a long, colonnaded passage where the light filters in sideways, making everything appear as though glimpsed through water. The stone beneath your feet bears two sets of grooves, not carved, but worn side by side, like the paths made by countless bare heels over centuries. And it hits you. These grooves were not made by soldiers. They were made by dancers. This is the Hall of Echoes, not named for its acoustics, but for what it remembers. Here, the Pharaoh once came to watch. Not performances, rituals, movements. Offered not for entertainment, but for transformation. Tonight, you return to one such offering, still preserved in memory, as if the walls themselves refuse to forget. A hush settles as you enter the space. It isn't silent, but it expects silence. You take a seat on a smooth, cool step carved into the wall. Before you, a stretch of floor polished to a mirror-like sheen, and on it she moves. One woman, barefoot, wrapped in a thin robe dyed the color of storm clouds. She moves like water through fire, each gesture deliberate, fluid, unbroken. Her wrists twist in spirals, her hips shift like wind pushing through tall grass. But her face remains impassive, not blank, composed, focused, entirely on what her body must say, because in this room, words are useless. She is not a concubine. She is not a priestess. She is something older. A vessel of memory, a conduit for emotion too dense for text. And as she dances, you realize the Pharaoh is here. Not in body, but in every pulse of the room. You can feel his gaze, not leering, not even desirous, but searching, as if watching her might return something that was lost, or explain something he never dared speak aloud. The dance is slow, not sensual in the modern sense, but aching. Every step holds a story. Every arm raised tells of a yearning restrained by centuries of etiquette. She begins a turn, one hand lifting to the ceiling, the other dragging along her ribs. And in that motion, you see it the echo of grief. The kind that wakes you from a dream you were begging not to end. The kind that lives in the body long after the mind has buried it. Foucault would argue that ritual is how power maintains itself, embedding desire into choreography so deeply that we forget it was ever imposed. But here, in this hall, you sense something else. This is not a command performance. This is therapy. This is the only place where the Pharaoh could feel, really feel, without needing to explain or justify. Because when the dance ends, there are no questions. There's no applause. There's only stillness. The dancer stops. Not abruptly, like a river finally finding its delta. Her hands lower. Her eyes close. And the room breathes again. You blink. And she's gone. A young man now walks across the space, carrying a shallow basin filled with ink. Not black, indigo, the kind used only in celestial charts. He kneels, dips his fingers, and begins to draw symbols across the floor stars. Spirals, the occasional glyph for listen or remember. He does not speak. He works quickly, as if chasing a message that might vanish if he takes too long. You recognize one of the symbols. Two male figures seated beside each other, knees touching. Not lovers, companions, equal, vulnerable, the kind of image rarely shown in tombs, but occasionally found scratched into broken potsherds, passed hand to hand in whispers. It's believed that some pharaohs took male lovers, not in secret, but in spaces like this, half ritual, half rebellion. Not scandalous, simply unrecorded. One scroll, hidden for centuries behind a false wall in a scribe's chamber, described. A ritual known only as the Mirror Walk, where the Pharaoh and his chosen companion would walk barefoot across a floor of obsidian tiles, reflecting only the sky. It was said that under the right stars, they would see not themselves, but who they wished to be. Together, the basin boy finishes his painting, steps back, and places a small reed whistle to his lips. One note, high, sustained, and in the doorway, a second dancer appears. He is older, stronger, but his movements are not forceful. They are precise, measured. He walks across the symbols slowly, never disturbing them, letting his shadow fall across their meaning. He raises one arm, the other follows. And suddenly you understand. This is not about sex. This is about symmetry, reflection, the body remembering what language tried to forget. The two dancers move now, side by side, their breath sinking in subtle waves. You can't look away. This is not performance. This is reclamation. And as they pause, at the center of the mirrored floor, the echo strikes, not sound, emotion, like a drop in the soul. A thud that isn't heard but felt. And in that moment, you understand. This was the Pharaoh's true temple. Not the halls with towering columns, or the courts heavy with law. This space where the body could be both sacred and human. Where sorrow didn't require permission. The dancers finish, the ink dries, the breeze returns, and you find yourself alone again. But the grooves remain. Two paths, side by side, worn into the stone. A record not written, but lived. Tonight, the Pharaoh will walk them again, in his sleep. In his memory, not for performance, for peace. The sound is unlike anything you've heard in the palace, so far dry. Rhythmic, like wind rasping across a field of reeds. Except it's coming from deep. Underground. You follow it through a narrow stairwell carved into limestone. Its walls marked with crude, uneven cuts, unlike the smooth polish of the upper floors. This is not royal architecture. This is raw, intentional. A hidden artery beneath the palaces. Skin. The air here tastes of clay and copper, heavy and mineral. As you descend, torches flicker to life without touch, as if recognizing your arrival. They burn blue, cold fire. The stairwell opens into a circular chamber with no visible entrance or exit, just a domed ceiling etched with thousands of names. In tiny curling script, not titles, not gods, personal names. Intimate names. The kind spoken in bed, murmured into necks, scrawled in the margins of forbidden letters. The room pulses with them. And in the center, on a low stone slab, lies a mask. It's not gold, not bejeweled, just bone-white alabaster, smooth, blank, except for the lips carved in the faintest smirk. You approach, but something in your chest tightens. This isn't a funerary mask. It's not for death. It's for dreaming. This is the chamber of faces, according to obscure temple records never meant for public eyes. Once a year, during the new moon of Thoth, the Pharaoh would descend alone, wearing only a linen sash and oil on his skin. He would choose one mask from this chamber. There are dozens, hidden in alcoves behind veils of silk, and wear it throughout the night. Why? To forget himself. To dream as another, not to become divine. To become other. A farmer, a thief. Dancer, a widow. A child. Sometimes they say, he dreamed as a woman. It wasn't deception, it was devotion. The king could not rule if he did not understand what it meant to be ruled by desire, by need, by hunger unfulfilled. So he became someone else. For one night, every year. And this mask, this smirking thing was said to bring the clearest dreams. You lift it. It's heavier than it looks. The lips are warm. You hold it to your face, and the world changes. Suddenly, you're not in the chamber. You're outside, under stars thick enough to feel. on a barge drifting down the Nile. The air smells of sweet beer and sweat. You are barefoot. Your wrists are adorned with bangles that chime softly with each movement. You hear laughter low and warm from someone behind you. You feel their hand on your shoulder, their breath at your neck. You turn. You don't know them. But your chest fills with something ancient. Something like recognition. This is the dream. You are in the Pharaoh's body. Or perhaps you are the one he's dreaming of. The boundary blurs. You touch your lips and realize you are smiling. And then the barge is gone. You're in a grain silo, hidden. The light slants in through slats in the roof. A figure leans over you, pressing a dried lotus to your lips. Their hands tremble. Not from fear, from wanting, from restraint. You feel their voice in your chest before they speak. If we are caught, they begin. But you don't let them finish, and then that too dissolves. Now you're in a child's room. The walls painted with animals. You're tiny. The bed swallows you whole. Someone, your mother, your nurse, sings a song you half remember. You cry, but not from pain. From knowing the song will end. Each dream unfolds like a petal dipped in wine slow. Lush, a little dangerous. Michel Foucault once wrote that identity is not a fixed point, but a circuit of memory, performance, and desire. The masks in this chamber are proof. They do not conceal. They reveal what the daylight demands we hide. You remove the alabaster mask, breathless. The chamber is still. You notice now that behind the main alcove is a small door, half hidden. You step through it and find a row of shelves, each one lined with tablets. Tiny, round, palm-sized. Dream records. Not written in hieroglyphs, but in scent. Each tablet is infused with oil myrrh, rosewood, cinnamon, pine, rainwater, clove, and as you pass them, you catch glimpses of lives not lived. A woman running barefoot through an orchard. A man weeping into another man's shoulder. A soldier opening his palm to reveal a gold ring he cannot wear. These are the dreams the Pharaoh wore as masks. Not fantasies. Truths. Desires denied in waking life. Honored here. And at the very end of the shelf, there is one empty space. For the next dream. For tonight. You leave the mask where you found it. You ascend the stairwell slowly. The blue fire dimming behind you. The palace is quiet. Sunset brushes the horizon with crimson. Somewhere, water is being poured into a ceremonial basin. Somewhere else, a priest whispers a blessing over a bed warmed with lotus oil. And in his chamber, the Pharaoh sits before a mirror, still, thoughtful, holding a mask to his face. Not to hide. To remember who else he might have been. The scent is strange this time, soothing yet sharp, like linen just washed in river water, then dried beneath a fig tree. You follow it instinctively, turning corners you don't remember passing before, until the architecture itself begins to soften. The clean lines and formal columns give way to curves, alcoves, shelves embedded into walls like honeycomb. Everything here is rounded, warm, built for closeness. The floor beneath your feet is no longer stone, but polished wood, creaking faintly with each step like it remembers laughter. You've entered the chamber of dreams made flesh. This is where the Pharaoh's visions, those that cling too tightly to disappear by morning, are acted out, gently, respectfully, by women who do not ask questions. Women who do not call themselves priestesses, though they've memorized every passage of the Book of Breath. Women who do not claim status, yet are trusted more than the king's own brothers. These are the readers of flesh, the soft interpreters. They do not decode dreams in symbols or metaphor. They do it with their hands. You're led to a low bench cushioned with goat wool, and seated beside you is one of them. Her name is Sie. Perhaps not her real name. Perhaps just the name used. Here, she's middle-aged, skin-freckled, eyes lined with kohl and practice sweeps. She doesn't look at you right away. She's too busy grinding dried blue lotus petals into a powder with a stone mortar. He dreamt of the orchard again, she says. But this time, the fruit was bitter. That's when I knew we'd need to start with the ribs. She smiles, faintly at your confusion. Emotion hides behind the ribs, especially regret. She dips her fingers into the powder and sprinkles it across her palm. You're not here to watch, she adds, glancing at you now. You're here to feel. You lie down. Not because you understand, but because the bench seems to ask for it. Sial begins by placing both hands gently on your sternum and her. Thumbs make slow circles, not sensual, not clinical. Something in between, as if trying to warm a forgotten word back into your mouth. He never names her, she says, but his breath catches when I press here. She moves her hands just slightly to the left, beneath the ribs. Here, where the sighs go. Historians write sparingly of these dream binders. In the margins of old medical papyri, they're referred to as comforters of the sleep soul. One fragment even claims they were consulted before battles, asked to translate the king's subconscious fears into strategic decisions, and yet they appear in no temple murals, no royal biographies. Their power lies in the trust given, never spoken, always needed. S.I.A. lifts a cloth and begins to wipe your arms with a warm, damp mixture of milk and crushed aloe. The scent is soft, creamy, maternal. This is from memory, she says. Touch is the only thing the body doesn't forget, even when the mind begs it to. She hums a low tone as she works. It's not a song. It's a vibration. You feel it in your spine. You begin to remember things you didn't know you'd forgotten. She presses along your neck, just beneath your jaw. Her touch here is firmer. This is where the names get stuck, she explains. The ones you're not allowed to say. The ones that belong to people who made you feel something you were told you shouldn't. And now your mind begins to drift. The light in the chamber blurs. The wooden beams overhead ripple like water. You're not sleeping, but you're not fully awake. You're in that soft place where truth wears other people's voices, and the body tells stories without needing words. You feel hands on your shoulders. Then not hands, weight. A head resting there. You don't know whose. But you want them to stay. S.I.A. continues, murmuring phrases in Old Egyptian, her voice low and without emphasis. The language is melodic, even. In whispers, she's not speaking to you. She's speaking to the part of you that remains in the Pharaoh's shadow. The part that has begun to carry his burdens without realizing it. In one corner of the room, a small clay oven keeps a pot of oil warm. Sial dips a piece of linen in it, wrings it out, and places it over your chest. He stopped dreaming of the flood last month, she says. But he still clenches his fists when he turns onto his side. You feel the warmth of the cloth melt into your skin. It soothes, but it also reveals. Beneath the comfort is a knot, an ache. It is not physical. It is longing. The oil smells of thyme and myrrh. She tells you it was once used in tomb rituals to soften the joints of the dead so they could move freely in the afterlife. The body must know how to let go, she says. Otherwise the soul gets trapped in the corners. She taps your shoulder lightly, and the corners of the Pharaoh's heart are sharp. There's a story Horus erased from a funerary text that one Pharaoh once demanded Sial's predecessor perform the full binding of flesh. A rite so intimate, so emotionally raw, it was said to age both the dreamer and the interpreter by a full season. She did it. He wept. She never worked again. Not out of punishment, but because she had seen too much. Sial pauses. Her hands now rest at your sides. She doesn't move. Do you feel that? She whispers. You nod. Though you're not sure what you feel. Just that something is loosening. Something is being returned. She removes the cloth. The air feels colder. Now you sit up slowly, unsure how much time has passed. She gives you a small bead, scented faintly with jasmine. For the road back, she says. To keep you from dreaming someone else's dream by mistake. You step out of the chamber. Into dusk. The stars are just beginning to prick the sky. A servant walks by with a jug of rose water. A cat darts past your ankle. The palace is calm. But beneath that calm, you feel a hum, a thrum of presence, of memory still unfurling like scrolls hidden in bone. And somewhere behind a screen, under a fan, between a sigh and a turn of the head, the Pharaoh sleeps again. But this time, he sleeps easier. You wake before dawn, not from sound but from sensation. The undeniable feeling of being watched. Not maliciously, not even curiously. Just observed, as if your breath has been measured, your posture assessed, your heartbeat quietly counted. You rise, barefoot, and find your way through a hallway of obsidian tiles that reflect no light, only suggestion. There are no guards here, no torches. Just the faint rustle of palm leaves brushing against linen curtains. And at the end of the corridor, you reach a pair of wooden doors. Not imposing, simple, but you hesitate. Because this is not just any chamber. This is the one the servants do not name, the one whispered about with eyes lowered. The room where the gods see dot. You push the doors open. Inside, it's not dark, it's not light either. It's the space between candle and dawn, where everything is visible, yet nothing fully revealed. The chamber is round sunken, the floor covered in woven reed mats that smell of damp earth and cinnamon. And along the walls dozens of statues, each one a god or goddess rendered in limestone, basalt, copper, each with eyes open, each facing inward, each watching dot. This is the watcher room, and at the center of the circle, beneath a skylight where starlight still filters through, is a low couch draped in white linen. The linen is wrinkled, recently used. A cup of half-drunk date wine sits on a stool nearby. A single sandal lies on the floor, its strap torn. Someone left in a hurry. Or perhaps not alone. It is said that the Pharaoh comes here not for prayer, not for solitude, but for confession. Not to priests, to statues, because the gods do not answer, they witness, they remember. They hold the truths too dangerous to say aloud. You walk slowly around the room. Each statue's gaze follows in silence. Bastet, serene and poised. Thoth, holding a stylus. Isis, arms outstretched, carved in such lifelike detail you half expect her to whisper. And in the shadows near the far wall, a smaller figure, humble, worn, a human figure, unadorned, kneeling, not a god. A servant, watching according to fragments in the history of sexuality. This room was part of a ritual known as the Mirror of Flesh. Here, the Pharaoh was not allowed to speak his title. Here, he was not king, he was man. He would lie beneath the gaze of the pantheon and speak what he dared not say in the courts, his fears, his cravings, his shamas. And on rare nights he did not come alone. You approach the couch. There are marks on the pillow, not indentations, stains, salt and oil. Someone wept here, or perhaps perspired through a vision so intense it left their spirit tender. The wine still steams slightly, recently poured, or enchanted to remain warm. You pick it up. The scent is dark, heavy. You do not drink. A voice speaks from behind one of the statues. It is soft, aged, layered like papyrus left too long in the sun. He comes here, it says, when he forgets which version of himself is real. You turn. The speaker is a man in simple linen, barefooted, carrying a scroll with no ink. He believes the gods can see through his body, he adds. That's why he doesn't hide when he's here. He steps closer, gestures toward the linen draped couch. Sometimes he brings another. Sometimes they lie together and say nothing. The silence is the ritual. The exposure is the offering. You ask who he is, and he smiles. I am the one who cleans the cups. He places the scroll on the floor, where it slowly begins to darken, as if absorbing the emotions of the room. Every sound made in here, he continues, Every sigh, every laugh, every plea, it stays. He touches the wall. The stone doesn't forget. He walks toward a small brazier and tosses in a pinch of blue powder. The smoke that rises isn't fragrant. It's cool. It smells of rain in dry places. There was a night, he says, when the Pharaoh lay here and asked the statue of Mot whether he had ever truly been loved. The room did not answer. But that night, when he slept, he dreamed of someone holding his hand without permission. The man smiles, and he cried. You realize then, this is not a story about the grandeur of rulers or the weight of legacy. This is about a man alone in a room full of silent watchers, asking to be seen, not as king, but as feeling. The man now opens a tiny compartment behind the statue of Thoth. Inside is a stack of linen cloths, each marked with ink that blurs at the edges. These are his night writings, he says. Only written after he leaves this room. Only written when the eyes still burn into him. He hands you one. The ink is faded, the handwriting uncertain. It reads, do they see what I fear? Do they see what I want? If they do, why do they still let me rule? The scroll is unsigned, but it doesn't need to be. You return it. The man nods and places it back gently, reverently. He turns to go, but stops beside the servant statue. This one, he says, is the only one who was once alive. She was a girl who served here centuries ago. When she died, the Pharaoh demanded her image be added to the room, because she watched without judgment. He lowers his gaze. Because sometimes to be seen without being changed is the greatest gift of all. You stand alone now. The room is still, and as you move toward the door, you feel the eyes on you, not heavy, not cold. Just present. And for the first time in this entire journey, you do not mind being seen, because you too carry truths that can only survive in silence. The night feels thicker now, like honey poured too slowly or the last exhale before sleep takes over. You are led not by scent or sound, but by absence. A corridor where no sandals scuff, no fans stir, no voices carry. This is the part of the palace beyond protocol, beyond formality, where the world doesn't end, it simply fades. And ahead, beyond a curtain woven of thread-dyed midnight blue, you step into open air. The sky above is dizzyingly wide. Stars spread like sand across black silk, and below it, the river. The Nile, wide and quiet and dark as oil, with a single reed boat drifting slow and silent across its surface. There are no paddles, no sail. Just momentum born from memory. This is the farewell float. No music plays here. No drums, no hymns. Just the soft lap of water against wood and the occasional groan of ancient rope tightening with the shift of the vessel's weight. You are guided aboard by a hand you never quite see. The deck is covered in cushions stitched with moon-shaped beads. The air smells of hibiscus, smoke and thyme. And in the center of the boat, sitting beneath a canopy of gauze, is the Pharaoh. He's not dressed for ceremony. No crown, no gold, just linen. Bare feet, one hand resting in a bowl of cool water, the other gently gripping the corner of a scroll that flutters, unread. His eyes are open, but not focused. His breath is steady, like waves against soft earth. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. You sit beside him. This is not a scene for action or revelation. It is a scene for presence. This boat drifts not toward a destination, but through a feeling, the knowledge that the night, and all it held, is ending. Around you, statues line the edges of the boat. Tiny versions of gods and goddesses, their eyes turned downward. Even the divine look away now, giving the king this last hour of privacy. It's said that in the final stage of the night rituals, the Pharaoh must be alone, not because he needs solitude, but because he needs silence. Not emptiness, just the absence of expectation. After all the incense, the oils, the dream readings, the secret lovers, The gods that watched from their altars, and the memories curled in the backs of his knees, he ends here. Floating, breathing, remembering. A breeze lifts the edge of the scroll in his hand. You glimpse its contents, no hieroglyphs, just lines. Blank lines, space for thoughts too fragile to be written. Or perhaps already written, then erased. Because some dreams, once fulfilled, lose their power. Others stay unfinished, echoing. Across lifetimes, you close your eyes. The Nile sways the boat like a cradle. Somewhere, a heron cries in the reeds. A sound so old, it doesn't need translation. And then the Pharaoh sighs. Not with grief, not with longing, but with relief. He exhales as though he has finally released something he's been holding since before he could speak. Perhaps since before he was crowned. Eleanor Herman once described a king who, after all his nights of splendor, always ended with the same wish whispered into his sheets. Let me forget myself tonight. Not because he hated who he was, but because the weight of being everything to everyone becomes unbearable, even in velvet. Tonight, this Pharaoh doesn't forget. He remembers gently, and lets the remembering drift behind him, rippling in the wake. You notice now that the edge of the boat is lined with tiny bells. They do not ring from movement, only from thought. Each chime is a goodbye to a version of himself he no longer needs, a lover's voice, a prayer he no longer believes, a fear that no longer bites. The river carries it all away. The moon begins to rise, fat and heavy in gold. It lights the water in ribbons. The Pharaoh dips his fingers into the river and lets the droplets trail behind. A ritual not found in any scroll. A language made of movement, of final things. And now, a hush deeper than any before settles over the deck. The ritual is complete, not with a flare, but with stillness. He closes his eyes, and as the boat turns gently back toward the palace shore, you feel the first breath of dawn curling along the horizon. Soon, he will return to his chamber, to his throne, to the world of names and power and pretense. But not yet. For a few more minutes, he is simply a man on the water, letting the gods rest, letting the dreams slip back into the tide. And beside him, you no longer just a visitor, but a keeper of what the night revealed. And now, as the stars begin to fade and the first pale blush of morning presses softly against the sky, your body sinks deeper into the quiet. The story, like the river, slows to a gentle meander, carrying with it the last threads of memory, of ritual, of the man who ruled not only by daylight decree, but by night's unspoken longing. The temple floors no longer echo. The candles have melted into their own shadows. Even the statues, once so still, seem to soften in posture, relieved of their eternal vigilance. You lie back now, letting your breath mimic the Nile's rhythm. Inhale, like the tide drawing secrets inward. Exhale, like the Pharaoh letting go of what no longer serves him. The walls around you are gone. The night does not end in silence. It ends in surrender. To sleep, to memory, to rest. You are safe here. You are seen here. There are no more scrolls to read tonight. No more names to remember. Only the warmth of the linen, the hush of the stars, and the soft pull of dreams not yet dreamt. Let them come gently. Let them wrap you in the same quiet that held the king as he drifted beneath moonlight. No need to chase them. They will find you. As they always have. So close your eyes, traveler of time. Let your mind dim its lanterns. Let your thoughts float downstream. The night is long enough to hold you. And the gods, those watchful, wordless companions, have already turned away to give you space to rest. Sleep well, dear listener. Sweet dreams. End of script. Sweet dreams.